What up, guys? Welcome to Base Damage, and this week I wanted to post up a different kind of video to help out our viewers who are beginners and new to the game. As the title states, it's going to pertain to Anti-Salvage, and specifically the Anti-Salvage that's currently only in English, so we're not really going to look at any others that will be outside of that, if any. I'm going to put up other videos later that will also help pertaining to the heal taxes and stuff like that, and other things that beginners can work around. So the first thing to look at, obviously, is what is salvaging, and that is specifically when you add back cards from your waiting room, or in some card game terms, graveyard, back from the waiting room or graveyard to your hand. That is specifically what salvaging is. So that is what cards like Hatsukaze and Sitting Mikan specifically try to keep your opponent from doing. And their specific effects, let's look at both of them right now. They both give a buff to their respective cards in their set, but the main effect that you got to worry about, and always read if these are there, is the Anti-Salvage effect. Hatsukaze is from Kantai Collection, while Sitting Mikan is from To Love Ru. During the attack phase, point number 1, when you or your opponent tries to add back a character from the waiting room to hand, point number 2, that respective players get characters all get -3 soul. So obviously point number 1 is these effects only go off in the attack phase. So look at it this way: you're going to have the main phase, you're going to have the climax phase. I'm going to go back to those two later, and you're going to have the attack phase. The specific effects that people have to worry about most during the attack phase are as such. First off, you have the climaxes that are the 1k1, which is 1000 power and 1 soul to all of your characters, and it'll have an icon that looks like a door. And that specifically states when it triggers, you can add back a character from your waiting room to hand. So that's during the attack phase. Other effects such as Tenryu from Kantai as well have a climax combo that state when they attack, so obviously it's during the attack phase / battle phase, you can pay the cost if the climax is in play to add back a character, to salvage one character. The last effect that I can really think of that immediately pertains to this during the attack phase is on reverse effects. If you look at cards like Trusted Skills Lizbeth from SAO, her Accelerate ability gives her the option that when she reverses the battle opponent, you can add back a character from your waiting room to hand. So those are different salvaging engines that you can look at for that, and those are specifically during the attack phase. Those effects will trigger the Hatsukaze and the Sitting Mikan effects. So other salvaging effects, like ones during the main phase that state when this character enters the field, you can salvage back a character from the waiting room. A specific example of this is Senju Gahara from Bakemonogatari. And during the climax phase, there was a climax combo in To Love Ru, Friends from Planet Tentak, I believe was what it was called, had a climax combo that states when the climax was played, you could salvage back a character, and she got a buff and whatnot. But those are during the main phase and the climax phase. Even though the characters do go back from waiting room to hand, it is a salvaging effect because Hatsu and Mikan specifically state during the attack phase, those effects are safe. You can use those and not worry about it. I've seen people use those effects or have those effects while I have one of the anti-salvages on the field and go, oh, well, shit, because of anti-salvage, I can't do it. And I'm just sitting there, just in the back of my mind, screaming, going, no, you fools. Anyway, other exceptions to this rule, because point number 2, it specifically states when characters are added back. If you do effects that state anything other than a character, there's another climax. It's a blue climax icon that looks like a pair of pants, but it's also a 1k1 that states when it triggers, you can add back a climax from your waiting room to your hand. That is perfectly fine. That's adding back a climax, not a character. That doesn't trigger the anti-salvage penalty of -3 soul. Doesn't go off then. You can use that perfectly fine. I do that. People do that in Kantai. One of the meta decks where it still runs Hatsu will run the pants trigger icon off one of the Haguro climaxes and still get that off. One of the other exceptions to this is if you add back events. There was a Happy Christmas Kasumi from Bang Dream that states when her combo went off when it was on reverse of the battle opponent, you could add back, it was an event card called Something in the Warehouse, but because that's an event card, not a character, you can add that event back off of that effect. You can salvage that event, and the penalty will not go off. You're perfectly and totally fine. So that's ways you can get around anti-salvage and still have a whole bunch of your effects available. There's really only 3 things you have to worry about, and that's during the attack phase of climax triggers, on reverse effects, and on attack effects. So that's really the big ones that you have to worry about. Even another exception to this is more of a way to play around it. So if you have one of the on reverse effects, let's go back to the Trusted Skills of Liz real quick. If I only have 1 copy of that Trusted Skills Liz on the field, I do her Accelerate combo. My opponent has Hatsukaze. If I swing with my other 2 characters first, let their damage try to go through, whatever, and I swing with the Lizbeth last, the order of operations is you trigger, you confirm how much soul damage is going to be dealt to your opponent. You do the soul damage first, and then you reverse the opponent. If the Liz would get over, if the Liz would be able to reverse the character, she does her soul damage first, and then she does the reverse. Meaning her damage will already go through before you activate her on reverse salvage effect. So that's a way to get around it. We had a guy who came to our locals, actually ran Kantai, ran Hatsukaze, but had a Congo. It was a level 3 Congo that states on reverse. It was at the turn she was played from hand to stage. When she reversed the battle opponent, you could salvage back 2 characters. But he would swing with her last. And have all of his other characters do their damage first, swing with the Congo last, do her damage, and then reverse, and then get the combo. Sure, it still does trigger the -3 soul, but you don't have to worry about that unless you have restanders. And if that's the case, get the restander effects out of the way first. But if you have on reverse salvage effects, that's one of the easiest ways to get around it, is have that character attack last, do its damage, and then proceed to get your salvage off, and you can still plus. So that's one of the biggest things people have to worry about, is when they do it. But as always, when your opponent is playing those types of cards, or anything that's like, you can't do this, or if your opponent does that, always RTFC. Read the freaking card. I cannot stress that enough. And I hope that watching this video, you will come to understand that as well. Probably the next video I'm going to end up going over effect-wise is going to be heal tax. There's actually a couple points to make on that. Not as much as there is for anti-salvage, but anti-salvage is not something you should be worried about. It's something that you can also look at it in the way of your opponent also has to do the same things. They can't run some of the main plussing combos, or they have to find a way to play around it themselves. And in that, when they drop it down, you can go, ha, I know what to do. Do you know what to do? Type thing. Use your head. Thank you all very much for watching. Subscribe if you want to. It's all good. And we'll see y'all on the flip side. Peace out for now.